So tonight, I've asked Kimmay Caldwell, the founder of Hurray Media and Hurray Kimmay, to host this panel of experts, each who have a different perspective on what it takes. And we will let her continue now with no further ado because they have a lot to say. Okay.
Thank you, Ellen. Can we give Ellen a round of applause? What is it, Tuesday? It's a Tuesday night. We're here, health scares in New York City, and we did it. I'm so excited that we're all here. Hooray! Yes, hooray! So as she said, my name is Kimmay. I am so pleased to be doing this evening. This is my third panel on this very topic that I have hosted within the past 3 months. I have been in the intimates industry for 15 years. I know it doesn't look it, but this is something very, very dear to my heart because I feel like the intimates industry has such an opportunity to change people's lives and their daily ritual, perhaps of putting on or taking off undergarments. And just like Ellen said, like it's one step at a time. Like if we can change that daily ritual and habit for one person, or if we can change our little rituals within our businesses, what kind of a big impact can we have? So over the last few seasons, I guess, it's been about inclusivity in the panels that I've hosted, and this time I was very much challenged to host panels on sustainability, and I panicked because I felt like I knew how important this was and wasn't very knowledgeable on the topic. So I'm so pleased that over the past few panels I have learned so much, still have so much to learn. And even though, Ellen introduced these lovely people as experts, I want to reclaim that because I feel like no one here is a true expert. Some people are extremely experienced in this field, have lots of great knowledge to share, and yet each of us really has so much more to learn. Even in our pre-meeting here, as we were talking about this, we were sharing some of the resources that we had, and another person said, actually we have new findings, that was not the best. Like, it was just, we have so much to learn here. So please look to these lovely people as experienced people within this field. And please know that we're still learning, and we hope you are open to learning this evening. You might even have some insight to share with us later too. That is kind of the whole point. As a industry, as a community, as a world, I think that we can come together and work on this problem and solve it together. Probably not going to solve it all in the next 45-minute conversation and 15-minute Q&A, but we can at least open the discussion and take some steps together. That is the point. So I'm so pleased to be here this evening. So, first, I want to introduce our lovely people that we have sitting up here with us. This is for your reference, so you see who they are. Also, if you'd like to connect with them or the companies that they represent this evening, this is their information here. Please, yes, take pictures, tweet at them, connect with them on Instagram, do whatever you gotta do. They're lovely. So, first, Kristen Classi-Zummo. Can you just raise your hand so we can see who you are? Hooray! Kristen is a director and industry analyst covering fashion apparel on the NPD Group's Market Insights team. She provides deep data analysis based on her industry expertise, offering thoughtful insights into the present and future of fashion and retail. We'll talk about that this evening. Kristen presents industry trends to manufacturers and retailers, including state-of-the-industry presentations and white space opportunity analyses. I'm sure some of you have been to some of the NPD presentations that we've had here, and they're phenomenal. Let's see, Kristen joined NPD in 2015 as a manager on the product team, working within the softline segment. Previously, she was a senior manager of product development and design for men's and women's blue label apparel at Ralph Lauren. And Kristen holds a master's degree in global fashion management and a BS in fashion merchandising from the Fashion Institute of Technology. While attaining her graduate degree, she studied apparel production in China and the luxury goods business in Paris. Please help me welcome Kristen. Hey, you could have moved smaller. Yeah, it's a Tuesday in New York City. Why not? Absolutely. Okay, our next person is Tricia Carey. Tricia, can you give us a little wave? Hooray. Tricia is a well-known advocate for innovation and sustainability in the textile and apparel industry. 20 years ago, Tricia joined Portals Fibers New York to develop the marketing plan for a brand new fiber called Tinsel. Ever heard of it? Today, Tricia directs the global business development team for U.S. apparel brands and retailers with a special interest in advancing more sustainable apparel development from fiber to consumer use. Tricia also served as the Vice Chair at Textile Exchange from 2014 to 2018, is a member of the FIT Textiles Department Advisory Board, and is currently on the board of accelerating circularity. Please help me welcome our lovely Tricia. Next, we have Larissa King. Larissa, give us a holler, yes. Tricia is a well-known, oh no, that's our Larissa is a well-known lingerie designer with a lifelong passion for ethical, sustainable fashion, and she is particularly interested in domestic production, textile science, and animal rights. She is currently the senior designer at Hanky Panky, and beginning as a bra fitter in a small-town boutique, and then transitioning to designer after graduating with a BFA from the Fashion Institute of Technology's lingerie design specialization. She has over 2 decades of experience within various aspects of the intimate apparel industry. She has designed for Hanky Panky since 2003 and is pleased to work for a brand whose values so closely aligned with her own. Please welcome Larissa. Last but not least, Kaneema. Kaneema, please, let's see who you are. Yes, great, thank you. Kaneema Gums has worked in fashion for nearly 15 years as a buyer, model, and lingerie designer. Most recently, she was the head of design at the Venice, California-based bra startup Harper Wilde, where she expanded the product assortment, championed the sourcing of sustainable materials for all styles, in addition to working with the team to set up the recycling program. We will talk a lot about that this evening. She double majored in biomedical engineering and linguistics, at Xavier University of Louisiana, but fashion pulled her back to LA, where she studied fashion. This is very dramatic, I love it. Studied fashion merchandising and design at the LA Trade Technical College. She started her buying career at Halston Heritage, then moved to Ross Stores, and eventually 7 for All Mankind, where she managed various categories from intimates to dresses, denim, junior plus, and petites. Kaneema left LA to hone her skills in full bust lingerie design at the London College of Fashion. And upon returning to the States, she has consulted with brands as a freelance designer while developing custom styles for private clients under the label K Chantal. She's also a curd model, and she's been in several campaigns, and you can connect with her on Instagram and her YouTube channel. Please help me welcome Kaneema. Okay, are we excited? Are we ready to talk sustainability? Perfect, I'm so excited. First, what is it? Let's just be clear. So, sustainability, if you look at the dictionary, has this to say. It is the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level. It is the quality of not being harmful to the environment or depleting natural resources, and thereby supporting long-term ecological balance. This is the driest, most simple way that we can talk about what we're talking about today, but I want to be clear that this is a big umbrella topic. Again, we could go on about this forever and ever. But if you go to, the UN has this really great resource here for their Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 17 of them that include many, many, many things. And I think for some of us, when we think of sustainability, we think specifically about eco-friendly or saving the earth, but there are actually so many other things involved in this topic. So what you'll hear us talk about today might be focused more on the earth-friendly side of things, but this topic is very vast. The future of fashion is circular. Why the 2020s will be about making new clothes out of old clothes. This was in vogue. Then we have Harper's Bazaar talking about this again, introducing circular fashion, the shopping concept that could save the planet. So this concept has come up a lot. It's something I just wanted to be clear what we're talking about. We'll go in depth in this in a minute, but here's the basic premise that we're talking about here. This is from Anna Brismar. Circular fashion can be defined as clothes, shoes, or accessories that are designed, sourced, produced, and provided with the intention to be used and circulate responsibly and effectively in society for as long as possible in their most valuable form, and hereafter return safely to the biosphere when no longer of human use. Whoa. That's a lot for us to comprehend. So, to have some more insight on this topic, let's get to our first question. And I have some slides to support us here, along with some quotes from other people. These people have so much to say. We'll try to get through all these questions that I have for them so that we can get to questions from you. But our first question here is for Tricia. So Tricia, there is a lot of talk about circular fashion, or closing the loop in the fashion cycle. And you are very passionate about this, and so is the company for whom you work, which I think we have, right here. I have more things to show you. So tell us, what does circular fashion really mean to you, and why is it so important?
Thanks for that great introduction and all the background information. I like to look at circularity in different ways, and so I like to look at it as small circles and big circles, right? Because it can be overwhelming to think of the totality of a larger circle. So when we think about circularity from a fiber producer, so we make viscose, modal, and lyocell, and in 2017 we introduced a fiber called Refibra technology, and that brought textile to textile recycling to a commercial reality. And so when we look at smaller circles, I look at how we can reuse the solvent in a closed-loop manufacturing production, which is what we do for our tensile lyocell. But when we look at something larger, we can look at our, oh, you're right on cue here. We can look at our Refibra technology. And so with Refibra technology, what we're doing is we're taking cotton scraps and we're making them into pulp. We're blending that pulp with our wood pulp in order to make a new fiber. So this is what we produce. We're a $2.2 billion company, and all we do is manufacture fiber. So what we've done here is to kind of create this larger circle of taking the textile waste and bringing it back into making a new fiber. So that I think is one way of looking at circularity, but I think when we talk about circularity within the apparel industry, we look at other ways now that we're addressing circularity, which goes back to your definition of circularity, of how we can keep garments in circulation until they're no longer humanly used. And that's through rental models, resale, and renewal models. And I realize that's a little harder for this industry to address.
Actually, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but yes, that is a good point. I want to talk, I'm going to make sure, I missed these before, I'm sorry, but this is actually from Lynn College had this great presentation at Tricia, and the students were talking about the top 6 ways that companies can actually work towards being more sustainable, and it was in sourcing, packaging, transportation, social responsibility, costing, marketing, and this blew me away that 70% of a garment's environmental impacts are determined during sourcing and design. So if you are a designer here or a company that's sourcing on a regular basis, this is where this can happen, and choosing the fibers that you work with and the companies who are doing that work on your behalf basically is really, really important. Another company who's doing that, this is Carolina Cohen, she says more and more brands are looking for eco-conscious material choices to meet the increasing consumer demand for more sustainable solutions. Niagen Eastman's cellulosic fiber is a sustainable fiber with a low environmental impact, and we see an increasing interest for this from fabric manufacturers and brands. This is something that people are asking for over and over, and if you even just walk through Tricia, this is one of the topics, is the fabrics and the fibers. This is also part of this, which we will also talk about recycling in a little bit. There are so many different ways that textile companies and recycling companies are working towards this. This is not an exhaustive list, I promise you. But if you go down here to hurraykimmay.com/expo, I have some of these resources, and please reach out to me if you know a resource or are a resource and you're not included here. I do not need to leave you off. This is just because we're all still learning, and I want you to have this information. Larissa, if you didn't know, I'm coming to you next. So Larissa, you've worked for Hanky Panky for quite some time now, as we mentioned, and being a smaller domestic brand that is using some Lenzing fibers, by the way, hello, you mentioned to me that your carbon footprint is relatively small to start, and yet there are still improvements that the brand could make. So briefly, I know you've taken so many amazing steps. Could you just give us a ballpark here of what are some of the changes that the company has made?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, with design and sourcing being such an important thing, you've moved into a lot of better options, such as using responsibly sourced cellulosic fibers, such as tensile,
Closer so we can hear you.
and Lenzing viscose, using domestic and organic cottons, which are also domestic, and also we've started using recycled synthetics in some of our lines. We've always been really conscious of minimizing raw material waste in our designs as well. It's just goes back to our brand values. We've also been transitioning to use reusable color-coded contractor bags instead of plastic bags for our cutwork and finished pieces, which is really exciting. And then in 2018, we launched Lingerie Cycle with the Bra Recycling Agency, and we buy offsets, and we've been working on minimizing packaging for our e-commerce orders and moving our other packaging into more sustainable things. But like you said, there's always more and more ways to improve, and I'm pretty proud of the progress we've made considering the limitations in the...
You should be, and also, right on the website, there's notes. I couldn't fit it all on here because there's quite a bit, but you'll see this over and over again that some of the companies that are taking these steps are proudly displaying them. They're letting people know, like, listen, here's what we're doing, here's what we're trying. We aren't doing everything perfectly, but here's, so you as a consumer or you as a retailer can find out what steps we are taking and what we're working towards together. So that is what Hanky Panky is all about. Thank you so much. So Hanky Panky is just one of the brands that is taking steps towards this. I'm going to go down the row. We'll start with Kaneema and work our way towards Tricia. What are like one or two brands out there, intimates or otherwise, that you feel like is taking good steps towards sustainability? Like who can we look to as a good example?
One of my favorite brands is an Australian brand called the Very Good Bra Company, and they practice like all natural fibers. They try to source everything from people who just do not use like dyes that are in that are not what is it called, carbon based. And try to just make sure that they're not using too much water. Just everything is sustainable about them. And then my other favorite brand is LA based, is Reformation. I think everybody knows that brand for the most part.
If you don't, by the way, their method of being transparent about how things are sustainable, or like they have like a grade of this is Dazzling has not. Yeah, so you get it. Like they are so good about educating the consumer on where this lives on like the scale of sustainability. I love that. That's a great example. Next.
So I would say for intimates, Naja, one of my favorite brands. And I love that you mentioned Australian brands. We're seeing a lot of innovation come from these small Australian brands. Naja's doing a lot of great work. I love that they don't focus just on one thing, and I know we're going to get into that later. It's not just about supporting the women that work for them, but which they do that. They employ women that come from different backgrounds. They encourage them to learn. They support them in the workplace. They also then have sustainable fabrics. They have sustainable products. So they're really kind of focusing on different efforts within the whole production cycle. And also Mara Hoffman doing really amazing things when it comes to
Fashion
swim.
brand.
Yeah, swim, which is a tough, garment to be sustainable with fabrics that have to be waterproof and have to suck us in and we just look good. But she's doing a lot of great work there and with apparel as well.
Amazing. Next.
And I love Patagonia for their commitment to sustainability, research, and transparency. And I also think that Stella McCartney is a great example of a brand living their values.
Next.
So hard because you've mentioned so many great brands, and they're also our customers and brand partners. But I would say Boyish Denim out of LA, former designer from Reformation, is doing a great job from fiber to finished garment. I think in the denim industry they have an additional challenge around the finishing process of denim. And I would say then out of the intimate apparel industry, Beneath out of Vancouver is doing a very great job. And they recently launched a new video, which I think is quite clever, and it's trees to trunks. So of course they have 10 cells.
I love a good pun.
Yes.
That's great. So here are, again, non-exhaustive lists just to give us some ideas here. So I had the lovely founder of Skin on the curve panel on this topic. She was very transparent. This was taken in Paris. I was about to host a panel and I walked by this sign from Kalita that said legendary quality, ultimate comfort, and sustainable before it was cool. I thought, okay, Kalita. Also, Pretty Polly came out with an eco-wear line of both tights and they have new undergarment products. Flirt has also been using some 10-cell products in their eco-conscious lingerie. Organic Basics has made a big splash. This is one of those companies that I think it's built into their brand from the very beginning, which is very different than a company that's maybe been around for 50 plus years and has to suddenly start putting this into their system. So it's a different example. Studio Pia, I also had her on the panel in Paris, and I'm just showing you some of the things from her website where she communicates to her consumers about how she takes sustainable steps, specifically with her piece silk, but also other parts of what she does. And she's a luxury brand, so she's a totally different side of the spectrum. Swedish Stockings, same thing. They have an entire digital magazine designed to educate their consumer on the sustainable steps that they take. This is like something they do not take lightly. They want you to read about everything that they are doing. So then Harper Wilde, let's talk about this. So Kaneema, you were most recently the head of design at Harper Wilde, and you were involved in several aspects of the business, including the recycling program. So we spoke about this at length because I saw this on Instagram, which I have these are some of the stories that I saw, and I wanted to be very candid with her. I was like, be honest with me, like what's this like? What really happens here? And she was very honest about sort of the trials and how this came about. So could you please talk to us a little bit about the process of Credence recycling program, and maybe even is it as easy as we all think? Is it a solution we're all hoping for?
Thank you so much. So the recycling program at Harper Wilde, we started it because we figured, how many women have about like 8 to 10 bras in their drawers that they just never wear? They don't know what to do with them. A lot of donations, you can't donate intimate garments or undergarments, so they're just left with them, and we don't want them to go into the trash. So we figured we ship these boxes. We ship our garments in boxes, so why not have them ship it back to us? Let's find another startup to use who specializes in recycling. So we partnered with the startup, and we basically overwhelmed them with the amount of bras. Like, it was an overwhelming response. It was almost 10,000 bras in 6 months. So then we're like, we can't take any more, because it means that when you're recycling a bra, you have to take it apart. A bra, we all know, especially if it's underwired, and we were doing about 80% underwired at this time, you have at least 16 pattern pieces, or at least 16 pieces. So you have all this hardware, and it's a very small amount of fabric, and they can't just throw it into the machine and recycle it because it's just metal everywhere. So you have to pay somebody to take it apart, and that's 30 cents per bra that we were paying to get them taken apart. Yeah, so then we found another recycling partner about 3 months later. So we have all of these bras just accumulating at our DC because we still were taking them. We were like really confident we could find somebody. And we managed to do it right before the Black Friday rush, an influx of sales. And this company, they wanted to test it out first and see how long is it actually going to take for them to take apart the bras. So they timed it at least a minute for a person to sit down and take apart each bra, which is still a very long time.
That sounds really fast to me.
But I mean, when they have to get through 18,000 bras, it's a whole team of people who are taking apart these bras, and if you know, like trying to take out an underwire, that's the most secure part of your garment. It's bar tacked at least twice on each side. So that was basically one of our struggles with the recycling program.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, this program is extremely successful because it seems like there are thousands and thousands of bras that people are willing to donate or recycle, but it also sort of points out the problem that we have with what do we do, how do we make this process better? So this question was not really, we don't really have the answer yet, right? Like, this is one of those things where we're like, okay, we can see what people are doing well, we can see there's a need, how can we make this process better? So thank you for being so transparent about that. I really appreciate it. My next question is for Kristen, because it looks like, is this it? No, not yet. Hold on. It looks like there is a lot of opportunity for change here, right? And there's a great deal of effort that goes into this, right? We've got 10,000 bras we got to recycle. We've got changes we need to make within the fabrics that we're using. So I think what everybody here wants to know, what I really want to know is it worth it? I mean, is there data to support that consumers really want this, that they're going to buy if we make all these changes? Like, what is the deal here? Can you just be honest with us?
Sure. So I love getting this question.
Right.
So, Kimmay, I think, honestly, we're kind of past the point, though, of asking, is it worth it? I think it's necessary, okay? It's going to be necessary to do business now, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And the data that we collect tons of consumer data on this because we're really interested at NPD about what's going on. Our clients are interested about it. It's the future of our industry. And the data points to consumer interest. And we see consumers, we ask, hey, are consumers driving these trends or is it the brands? Are the brands coming out and pushing this on the consumer, or is there really a need? Is there a call from consumers to have more sustainable practices? And yeah, we're seeing it, and the data is pretty consistent. So with a lot of our questions, we're seeing a quarter of total respondents spend on brands that they support, socially, they agree with their social efforts, buy sustainable apparel, will buy sustainable apparel. And then within those respondents, always trends towards younger consumers. A third, 50% of younger consumers are buying from sustainable brands, plan on purchasing sustainable brands. So again, we're seeing as the trend is growing, really resonating with younger consumers. And now what does that mean as they continue to grow in their careers, have more of the discretionary spend, especially Gen Z coming up? I mean, we're seeing younger consumers, look at what's going on with plastic straws. I mean, 5 years ago, did we ever think we'd be in a position where someone's walking down the street with a plastic straw, almost ostracized, right? So it's kind of what is socially acceptable. And the way production has been going on is becoming less and less socially acceptable. And consumers are calling for brands and retailers to react.
And I think it will only spread too, right? I think I'm saying we, I don't live here anymore, but we live in a place where most of you live here where this is a big topic that we talk about a lot in our circles. I just moved to literally middle America. I moved to rural Oklahoma. And as stereotypical as it is, it's still changing there. I know, you imagine. It's very different from New York City, but it literally does take time for these changes to go. So if you have middle American clients, trust me, this is coming. They will absolutely be asking for this. This is a quote from Vienne Chung Brown, and she says, as we continue to research for sustainable suppliers and materials, validation can be challenging. She admits it, like this is a difficult thing to do in your business, particularly for a small independent business. However, we try our best, we do our homework. Thinking about it, admitting to your ignorance, and staying open to discussions are great first steps. The reason I bring that up is simply because I think there are, it can be overwhelming to think about all the things that we want to do. So I'm going to say this several times. This is a step-by-step process. Pick one thing, do it well, try again, fail, do it again, and then do it again. So here, this is going back to that Harper's Bazaar magazine article from before. These are sort of the 7 different ways that are forms of sustainable fashion. Some of these do not apply to our industry. So if you think about it, secondhand and vintage, a little bit more difficult. Rent, lease, and swap, very difficult. So let's be honest, this is open to anybody. We'll hear probably from like 1, maybe 2 people on this, but let's be honest, if one of the steps towards a more sustainable world is less production and sharing products or maybe longer lasting products, how can sustainability and consumerism and capitalism coexist, or can they? Anybody?
Well, I think they can coexist, and I think, if we all look back, 20 years ago when we were in the industry, and we looked at average price points of fabrics. I know when I started with Tencel, the average price point of a fabric was somewhere between $6 and $10 a yard. And now you're looking at, $2 to $3 is that sweet spot. So how can we go back to having the value, having the quality in the fabric? You don't need to sell as much if you are, making good profits off of it, and everyone is fair in that. And I think what's happened over the past 2 decades is, who's really making the most money in this whole scenario? It's the retailers and brands. It's definitely not in the supply chain. We keep getting squeezed more and more. So I think we need to kind of step back to that way of where we have values in what we're selling, and where our products are actually treasured and not a part of fast fashion.
Love that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think that, again, consumers need to focus on buying fewer, better, higher quality things, like you said, and, invest in taking care of them, and that brands need to accept that you need to become profitable without planning on infinite growth and infinite sales growth forever and ever, because it's just not possible.
Anyone else? Sorry.
So earlier you had a definition of sustainability, just, your basic book dictionary definition. So we wanted to understand, what does the consumer think about sustainability? Just basic. What is their definition of sustainable apparel? And we asked them, we gave them all these options, eco-friendly, environmentally friendly, fair on animals. The number 1 response was long-lasting. that they associated sustainable fashion with long lasting. And we're starting to see this in the data, that consumers are gravitating more towards items that are made better, long lasting. And that really is the most sustainable thing we can do, having less product out there and getting more uses out of what we're purchasing. So again, we're starting to see the consumer response and consumer sentiment really gravitate towards that.
Love it. I need to move on, but that was lovely. I want to get back to Tricia and talking about education. So I also want to talk about greenwashing and what that means. So this is from Lauren Finn. She's a design student. She's a new person in our industry who's looking to create a brand. And she says one of the ways to tell if a brand really knows what they're talking about and is really committed to sustainability is to ask them questions. If a brand is not lying or trying to greenwash, then they should be more than willing to tell you all about the hard work that they are putting in to save the planet. Because as you mentioned earlier, this is hard work. So Tricia, Lenzing takes great steps to educate their clients, but how can we tell when a company is really committed to sustainable practices versus just in it for the marketing trend? Or in other words, what's your advice to someone here who might well-intentioned but end up greenwashing instead of actually really doing the work?
I think it's a great question because we come across this a lot now, and I always look that brands have a strategy, that they have goals, that they're measurable, and that they actually report on them. And I'm not saying that you have to have 20 different goals, and you don't have to save the world from what your own company is doing, but that you do have these step-by-steps that you're taking to make a change and make a difference. And I think, now you showed some great examples of companies who are highlighting and featuring what their goals are online. And I think if there's a way that you can make it understandable to the consumer, so, that's what's really important, is that they can understand whether it's a water savings or if it's a waste savings, but you have to have goals.
I love that. I think goals are underutilized so often. Okay, let's see what we have next here. This is from Brandon Rowe. He says, many people in the industry struggle to apply the idea of sustainability to their business. Even when they have the best intentions, efforts can still come across as greenwashing. The best brands, I'm going to say it a million times, are taking it step by step rather than making some grand promise for the future. Let's bring it back to Larissa. Larissa, I have this picture over here from a retailer in Canada. This is Sonia Perkins from Forever Yours, if anyone knows her. She's a very outspoken person in our industry. Love her. Thank you for the giggles. Love her. She's super, super funny, but she also really presses hard on brands to meet and match the values of her business, and this is one of them, which is packaging. So I know Hanky Panky has taken strides to, quote, ship naked to retailers, and that certain retail partners now insist on it, and packaging seems to be like a good place for some brands to start, but there are so many options to upgrade to be more sustainable. So where is a good first step or first place for a brand to start with this?
I will first say that a lot of retailers insist on the individual polybagging and the plastic hangers, and that just breaks our heart every time. We started working with our merchandisers, we're working on it right now, but to reclaim the plastic hangers from certain department stores and ship them back so that we can keep using them, because it's such a waste of everything. But for brands who want to take their first steps, I would recommend just reach out to your wholesale customers, reach out to your suppliers, and see how you can meet their needs while reducing waste. Because a lot of department stores, boutiques especially, they'll work with you, and we're all trying to do the thing. So it's just best to open up a line of communication, see what they need, how you can help them, and how you can work together to have less waste.
So collaboration is the answer. I love that. Any other suggestions, or somebody else have a suggestion for a good first step?
Oh, sorry, and then another one is just start questioning your fabric suppliers too. Again, with viscose, things can come from really questionable sources and things that you don't really realize. You're just like, oh, it just comes from trees. And you're like, oh, this comes from special trees. We don't want to kill those trees. So it's really important to just ask everybody along all levels of the supply chain Fair.
And going back to like, that's a knowledge thing, right? Like asking and being transparent, but also going back to the collaboration thing, there are great people in our industry who have already done some of that, asking, and this is a global problem. And so I think that we can ultimately all work together, and that one fabric doesn't belong to that one company unless they have proprietary rights over it, right? So like you can absolutely learn from your competitors and collaborate with them and ask them questions on this. I know some are more than willing, but it's definitely possible. Anybody else have a suggestion for a good first step for a brand to take in being more sustainable?
I think if you don't know where to start, the UN is an amazing partner. We've been talking with them a lot at NPD about sustainability efforts and how we can work together, and they shared some initiatives with us, how they partnered with brands. So if you just really don't even know where am I going to start, you could reach out to me. I have a contact there, and I can put you in touch with them, and they're really a great partner with a lot of fashion brands.
Collaboration at its finest. This is from Sandra Kopani. She says the most important actions a brand can take are in its supply chain. We've mentioned that several times tonight. Things such as reducing carbon emissions, textile waste, and water use. Also using eco-friendly materials, coming up a lot, including recycled materials and using low-impact dyes that are not harmful to workers or the environment. She's the co-founder of Good On You, which we will see a little bit about later. So then, Kaneema, let's get back to you here. I have an example here of a brand outside of the intimates industry that is making big impact in this. This is something that's really part of their brand values and something that Eileen Fisher has been doing a lot of. But you work in several aspects of the fashion business. So can you give us some examples or what you've seen in other fashion categories that we can, as an industry, sort of take as an example?
There's some brands that are just even in intimates, if you have any garments that are single fiber, like if they're just 100% cotton, there's a great company called 4 Days. They were a startup in LA, and I believe they launched about a year and a half ago, and you can buy, your upfront cost for the garment, for let's say for a simple t-shirt is $45, which is a lot, but then you can return it after you've worn it through, because a t-shirt, especially if it's a white t-shirt, you get the stains and everything, don't want to rewear it, you return it, and you can buy a new one for $8. So you can, and they constantly recycle them, and they keep it closed loop, and they're constantly upcycling the fabric, because it's not going to go down into like, what's the word for it? Not landfill, but like fiber fill or like even insulation or anything. It's going back into another garment that's of comparable value. So I think that if we have anything that's a monofiber or just single fiber, it's natural fiber, to redo that and to try and establish a practice that's similar to 4 Days. I think that would be beneficial.
Tricia, I want to ask you briefly, because you worked a lot in the denim industry, which is totally different than intimates, but what are you seeing there that we can either copy or maybe we can throw this at you?
Yeah, I think the denim industry has done a great job of looking at that textile recycling. They do a lot around mechanically recycled cotton. I think they're doing a lot to measure the entirety of the garment too. So looking at fiber, fabric, how all the components and which needs to be done in the intimate apparel industry. And I think there you see a lot of collaboration between supply chain and retailers and brands.
Hooray, collaboration. Here's another example. This is Patagonia, which again, they are very loud about their sustainable and ethical practices. It is definitely built into their whole practice and their business model in general. So they're a really great example as well. Let's go back to Kristen. Kristen, where do you see sustainability in intimates headed? What is the data telling you? Or, I'm throwing this at you, what is your heart telling you?
My heart tells me a lot of things. So, luckily, kind of what my heart tells me, what the data's saying is marrying up, or matching up. So, we talk a lot about 360 degrees of sustainability, and similar to a circular, sustainability model. It's important to think about sustainability every step in your production cycle. Again, it takes one step. We know we're not going to solve all the problems today, and consumers really relate to authenticity. You don't have to have all the answers, but hey, this is my plan, this is how I'm trying. Putting out a line of just, socks that are made from recycled plastic bottles, it's not really making a dent in the environmental impact, and you're putting more product out there. So instead of those initiatives, think about, well, how am I cutting down on water? How can I cut down on my CO2 emissions? Am I sourcing local products? I'm manufacturing in Indonesia, but I'm sourcing products in China. There's air freight going on there. My end results. Can my clothing be reused, recycled in some way, brought back? So just thinking about all these different steps in your production cycle and how you can tweak each one of them, a few of them, to help make it a more sustainable product. And again, I did product development for 6 years. I get it. I was in those meetings with suppliers, and I was on the factory floor. We're not sitting up here saying, we know how hard it is, and at the end of the day, you have to make a profit. But thinking about tweaking certain steps in your production cycle ultimately lead to a more responsible product. And I want us to get away from that word sustainable, because nothing here is sustainable what we do, but it can be more responsible.
I love that. That's a great little tweak. Yes, that's a round of applause. Yes. So speaking of profit and measuring success, and we talked about goals earlier, for looking ahead at where things are headed. This is from State of Fashion 2020 by McKinsey & Co. and the Business of Fashion. The global fashion industry is extremely energy-consuming, polluting, and wasteful. Hooray! Despite some modest progress, fashion hasn't yet taken its environmental responsibilities seriously enough. Next year, fashion players need to swap platitudes and promotional noise for meaningful action and regulatory compliance while facing up to consumer demand for transformational change. They said it, we mean it, it's all the same. But this is sort of, again, open to anybody. I'm going to skip this one for now, but this is a lovely quote from Jacqueline Saba from Soak. And she talks about, how do we measure success in this? How do we decide that if it's more than just the bottom line or profit? How do we measure our success? And she said, well, it depends on how you define the bottom line. Our 100% recycled plastic bottles are more expensive than virgin plastic, and they've been with us since 2012, so it's more expensive on our bottom line, but better for our planet, our customers, and our retailers. And it's simply the right thing to do, even if we are ahead of the curve and it's more expensive. Fundamentally, it shifts how organizations look at and define the bottom line. We've moved the line to focus on what's important rather than just cash. We get it. Profit is fuel for the company so it can do more work. But how can we measure success beyond profit, and maybe including it too? Anybody have something for that?
Well, I think when we look at it, I think from a sustainability standpoint, you're not looking at short term, you're always looking at long term. And this is something, we have several large investment programs of building additional production facilities in Asia. And we have to have the right investors who understand that this isn't going to be something that is a quick win, it's a long term. But I think also whenever you can tie something economically back with something that works ecologically, that's where you have the win-win. And so for us, it's in closed loop manufacturing process, or it's even in, we have a biorefinery concept where we can take the tree and actually burn the bark for fuel for our plant. So this is where, you do have the efficiencies and byproducts that then can be sold off. So anytime that you can tie those two together, that's when you really have the win.
I love that. You want to, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that you're investing in the future, and that eventually consumers and regulators are going to require these things, and you're better off getting ahead of it than waiting for the plastic bag ban and then scrambling around.
That's a really, really smart point. I am going to go back to this really quickly. This is Queen of Raw, and she talks about how she works with materials specifically, but bringing $120 billion worth of unused textiles back to life. If we do not make a change by 2025, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water from textile production alone. Queen of Raw has already saved over 1 billion gallons of water while saving businesses millions of dollars with supply chain efficiency. An optimized supply chain is the solution for people, for planet, and for profit. Brands can recoup up to 15% of their bottom line by letting Queen of Raw sell their unused fabric stocks. So there are ways for you to do this and actually come out on top in profit too. So that's kind of nice. Before we get to Q&A, so if you have a question, please think of it now. I just want to hear from people up here what are one or two resources that you feel like if people could go there and learn? You already mentioned one, the UN, but what are one or two of your best resources of websites or people or consultants or whatever that these lovely people can look up? We'll start this way this time and go that way.
I'm going to give two. So Eco Textile News, I think, does a great job of really highlighting the issues, because I think in this, topic about being responsible, there's always trade-offs. I think they do a great job of that. And the other is Sourcing Journal, and I'm going to give a little plug for a workshop that they're having. It's March 31st here in New York City, and if you'd like to see me afterwards, I have a discount code for you to come for the day. I know, right? Get a deal. It's a one-day sale right here. And but I think they're doing a great job too of highlighting.
Awesome. Next.
Elizabeth Klein has written some really good books and articles on this subject, and I recommend those. And checking out the Higgs Sustainability Index, which is put out by the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and it's really great because it just shows you various fibers and fabrics and what the impact is, and it's a really easy tool to use and see.
Awesome. Next.
The Fashion Revolution, Larissa and I were talking about this earlier. They release every year a Fashion Transparency Index. They just released 2019. I recommend reading it. It's amazing. And also Good On You. So this app is phenomenal. If you're questioning any brand that you want to purchase, if you want to see how your own brand ranks, they give a really interesting and fair ranking and rating to brands and how sustainable they are. And they're honest and could be a little brutal, so agreed, yes. Next.
And we were discussing earlier about the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. That's one of the resources that we use to help link us up with...
Say the name again, just really clearly for everybody.
The Ellen MacArthur Foundation.
Thank
They
you.
linked us up with our current recycling provider. But then we were talking about before, we also have to be careful about misinformation, because there are things that when people are so excited about everything being green, we can also tend to fall into myths.
So that's a good point. Like, we are all still learning, right? Like I said, all the information we're giving you, truthfully, because we believe that this is good information, but also this part of our industry is still growing. There's a lot to learn here. So I put Good On You as my example up here as well. They're a phenomenal app that you can use, and they actually have an ultimate guide to ethical underwear for men and women. There are so many brands on there that we did not even mention tonight. So there are lots of brands that have been rated really high for them that I, as a person who's in this industry for 15 years and goes to all the expos, hadn't even heard of. And a lot of them are actually just direct to consumer. So there's just a lot of opportunities for us to see who's doing this and who's doing it well. Finally, I just want to put our lovely information up here so you can connect with these people. Before we get to a Q&A, can we just give these lovely humans a big applause? This is their time and energy to share this with you. So, does anyone have any questions for us this evening? Yes, all the way in the back. I'm coming to you. Hey girl, good to see you.
Hi, some of you know me. My name's Kelly. I cover lingerie at WWD. This is for Kristen, but anyone else could jump in. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on, do you think that lingerie and swimwear will reach the rental market at some point?
It's a good question. I think it's a great opportunity to partner with rental. If you're renting, it's something for an evening wear outfit, you're going to need undergarments to go with it. Whether it's hosiery, whether it's intimates, I think there's a huge opportunity there. Maybe it's not rental, but maybe it's partnering. That's an easy add-on. And we know with the increase in online shopping, impulse purchases, which are sometimes our basics and intimates, they've been suffering a bit. Great opportunity for that impulse add-on purchase while you're renting maybe a more formal item.
I think swimwear could be a really great opportunity because, it's worn less times and maybe less intimate, especially the tops, but we'll see. Yeah.
I could also see special occasion, like the long line bras and those kind of things for events, because that's not as, it's not panties.
And I will just add, if we say that intimates really isn't in the resale market, go on Poshmark.
There's lots of bras.
Yeah, there are a lot of bras on there, and they're selling.
Tricia, I do think also the renewal market, we can't forget that. When you look at returns, and actually Renewal Workshop is a great resource. And Mara Hoffman, who we highlighted before as a wonderful brand who's doing a lot of responsible, programs. they are a part of Renewal Workshop in highlighting some of their swimwear. So what do you do with those overstock? What do you do with the returns? And I think as there's been more and more shopping online, you know, you can sit with a whole inventory of product that's still very usable, but how do you get it back into inventory? So,
Next question. Come right here. Go over to you next.
This is for Kristen. Has your research shown that the consumer is willing to pay more for sustainable products?
I love getting this question. Because yes, it has. We've asked consumers, would you pay more for sustainable, you know, for apparel that was labeled sustainable, eco-friendly? 30% said yes, with over 40% of those respondents being millennials, under 34, between 18 and 34. So I always like to be real about this. What people say and people do are two totally different things, right? But what this signifies is that the intent is there, okay? So people are saying that they will, but the way that we're seeing this industry or this idea of sustainability or being more responsible, I like to kind of think about how people viewed organic food 10 years ago, right? It was more money, it was more expensive, but then it started to be more affordable and it became available to a more wider range of people. That's kind of what I'm seeing with this, that it is a little bit more higher price now, but more people are going to expect it to be available at all different ranges. And we're seeing different retailers become involved in more sustainable. You know, Zara saying they're going to have completely, you know, sustainable resources by 2025. We'll see if they get there, but we're seeing it go across the board. So the willingness is there, where we are seeing it.
Great question. Was it the next question?
So this is kind of a follow-up to that question, and it's for any of you. But what about the people that can't afford to pay more? So in talking about cutting down what you're buying more quality, what if they can't afford that and don't have the time to take better care? You know, there's those single working moms that are buying a $10 bra and she doesn't have time to hand wash it or line dry it. Obviously companies can cut their profits and look at their fabrics and supply chain, but what do you kind of recommend for that consumer?
I think that consumer overall is not the person who has the most impact. The people who have the most impact, they're the ones who are going to use this product until it falls apart. They are trying to extend the life of it. They are going to try and hold it together by any means necessary because they can't make that next purchase. The people who can make the purchase are the ones who we need to target, who need to get, you know, just to purchase the higher price point item.
Anyone else? It's a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, you know, as we were saying before with the secondhand with the bras, I mean, you can get some really good deals on eBay and Poshmark and all these, you know, great apps for, you know, things for, you know, for that customer. And I mean, hand washing your bras, I mean, I throw mine in the sink while I'm in the shower, you know, and then when I get out of the shower, I drain it and rinse it through and hang it up. It's not, I mean, obviously, you know, everything's at a premium, but it's not.
I'll answer to this too because I do a lot of I'm like right in copy, that's why I'm backing up. I do a lot of education on this to Middle America. So I go on the Racial Ratio and talk about this to people who are exactly that person. And you'd be surprised once you say, by the way, did you know it could be this easy? Or hey, it's this easy and it's going to save you time and money actually. And by the way, if you're spending $25 on a bra, but you're only wearing it a few times versus spending, you know, $45 on a bra and taking really good care of it, you can get this much use out of it. Money talks. So I think like time, energy, money, we're all starving for it. Not just that consumer, like everybody is. And so if you can speak their language and help educate them and make small tweaks, not a giant tweak of like, I'm going from a $25 product to a $250 product, they'll come along with you. They'll get it. You just have to like speak their language a little bit. That would be my suggestion. Good question. Anyone else? Yes. We have lots of questions. This is exciting. You might work out.
So a few years ago, Walmart did something very logical in their shoe business, which was they basically told their shoe manufacturers to not distribute the shoes in boxes because they were basically throwing the boxes out and people they had 2 employees per store who actually took the shoes out of the boxes and displayed them. What are some obvious things in this industry that you go, duh, why aren't they doing that you could just get done?
At Harper Wilde, we actually had one issue with shipping the garments from our manufacturer in Sri Lanka over here because we were having a lot of damage rates. So we started using hard hats to put on top of our bras. They're basically like plastic caps that are molded to the, to the cup size. And we put it on the front and the back, and we don't do individual poly bags. We only did one mono bag, just single poly bag. And that was one way. We just group all of them together and then bring them back. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's not the easiest, because I think one of the biggest issues we have is making sure the garment arrives to the store undamaged so we can actually sell it. So there is always going to be that cost benefit analysis that we have to do to make sure the damage rate doesn't exceed the profit.
Yeah, and again, like with the poly bags, we're just trying to work with your retailers, and I think if more of us work with the retailers and push back on the individual poly bagging mandate, I think we could reduce a lot of plastic, because it's just amazing the amount of poly bags that go out into the world and then go to the landfill. And if you can, at the very least, have one box, like our picture, with just all the things in there, it helps.
I think very much like you have with the shoes, it's also in packaging underwear. When you have, underwear that's packaged in a box, I mean, one of the beauty of feeling tensile or modal is, is the softness of the hand, and when it's packaged in a box, you can't do that.
Right.
So, do you need all this packaging? I think that's definitely an area that can be reviewed. Easy win.
Great question. That packaging came up in every single one of the panels that I hosted as one of the easiest things that we can do, or at least one of the most things that we can do, as far as do we need all of the packaging? And again, I know we're working with some retailers that insist on it, but if we can work together and collaborate and let them know, like, hey, this is a good thing we can get rid of. It's spending, like your employees have to spend time in this, we're spending time, this is not great for our environment, we can make this change together. I really feel like we can make a big difference. That's a really wonderful question. I was told that has to be the last question, but you can stay. So how long can they stay, Ellen? Till tomorrow morning. No, absolutely, yes. We understand. We're at time, so I just want to thank you all so much for your undivided attention and for being so amazing.